Welcome to the Unraveling the Scriptures channel. Envision a scenario permeated by malevolence and decadence, where humans yearn to establish connections with angelic beings. Daughters end up conceiving children from their own fathers. Today, we will delve into the narrative of Lot, a man whose decisions placed him at the epicenter of extraordinary events. Be prepared to witness the judgment and divine wrath that will culminate in the annihilation of a civilization. In light of this, I request your support, expressed through likes and subscribing to the channel. I invite you to stay with us until the conclusion of this intriguing storyline. Why did Lot's daughters lie down with their own father? The full story of Lot in the Bible. The first accounts of Lot in the Bible are recorded in the book of Genesis, starting from chapter 11. Lot's story, a biblical figure, begins with uncertainty about the origin and meaning of his name. Some scholars suggest that it may represent the idea of a covering veil, thus indicating a reference to the importance of presenting oneself well before others. According to the Bible, after his father's death, Lot left Ur of the Chaldeans and traveled to Haran, accompanied by his grandfather Terah, his uncle Abraham, and Sarai. When Abraham left Haran after Terah's death, Lot followed him to Canaan. During a period of great famine in Canaan, Lot and Abraham went down to Egypt and settled there. However, after being deceived, the Pharaoh of Egypt expelled Abraham and Sarai, causing Lot to return with them to Canaan. During this time, both Abraham and Lot prospered significantly. Their flocks grew to the point where the region could no longer accommodate both, leading to disputes between their shepherds. The contrast between Abraham and Lot in the biblical narrative is evidenced mainly by the fundamental choices they make in the face of opportunities and challenges presented in their journeys. Abraham is characterized by his obedience and trust in God's promises, which is reflected in how he conducts his life. His faith guides his choices, becoming a notable example of someone who places divine will above earthly interests. It is essential to recall the episode of the three mysterious visitors in Mamre. One day, Abraham is seated at the entrance of his tent under the oak trees of Mamre when he suddenly perceives the presence of three men before him. The intensity of the account suggests that these visitors possess an extraordinary nature, as Abraham quickly prostrates himself in reverence before them. At this moment, he demonstrates remarkable hospitality, inviting them to stay and rest while offering water to wash their feet and food to restore their strength. During this encounter, Abraham and Sarah receive surprising and transformative news. One of the visitors reveals that, at the same time next year, Sarah, though already old, would have a child. This divine promise aligns with the earlier one in which God had assured Abraham of a numerous offspring, comparable to the stars in the sky. The story of the visit in Mamre not only highlights Abraham's exemplary hospitality but also reveals the intimate and personal nature of the relationship between God and his faithful servant. On the other hand, Lot seemed to be increasingly influenced by the temptations of the material world and enticed by seemingly prosperous opportunities. For these reasons, Abraham and Lot decided to part ways. At the time of separation, Abraham generously allowed Lot to choose the land he would occupy first. Abraham's decision to separate from Lot, seeking to preserve harmony and avoid conflicts, emphasizes the spiritual maturity of this patriarch, who values peace and communion with God above material disputes. Lot chose the lush plains of the Jordan towards the Dead Sea, near Sodom. He was drawn by the beauty and fertility of the region, allowing himself to be influenced by purely material considerations. This decision, though understandable from a human perspective, highlights Lot's vulnerability to the allurements of the world, in contrast to Abraham's spiritual steadfastness. After the separation, Lot settled in Sodom, where he quickly became involved in local affairs and seemed to have attained a prominent social position. However, the Bible describes the inhabitants of Sodom as extremely wicked, a situation that deeply troubled Lot. In the New Testament, the Apostle Peter describes Lot's constant suffering witnessing the evil that plagued the city where he resided. While Lot was in Sodom, a battle occurred in which the kings of Mesopotamia defeated the cities of Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, Zeboim, and Zor. In this conflict, all of Sodom's possessions were plundered, and many inhabitants, including Lot, were captured. Upon learning of the incident, Abraham organized a rescue force that, in a nighttime battle, defeated the enemy army and recovered Lot's belongings. It was during this episode that Abraham encountered Melchizedek. Despite the war involving Sodom, Lot chose not to leave the city, and his story continues to be narrated in the Bible. The narrative continues with the visitation of angels to Sodom, a city immersed in chaos and perversion. The divine presence in the corrupt city underscores God's concern for human wickedness, aligning with the message of Jeremiah 23 verse 24, emphasizing God's attention to the cry resulting from injustice. This situation resonates with the biblical message that God is vigilant and willing to act in the face of evil. The Lord declares his intention to investigate the sins of Sodom, revealing his justice and rejection of iniquity. However, faced with such disappointment, God decides to destroy the city. The narrative highlights the depravity of the inhabitants of Sodom, evident in how they received the angels of the Lord. The sinful behavior of the men in the city, desiring to engage in sexual relations with the angels, was one of the main reasons for the city's destruction. During this tumult, Lot tried to calm the situation in a controversial manner by offering his daughters to the men of the city, reflecting his weakness and the harmful effects of the city on him. At this moment, the Bible delves into Abraham's courageous intercession before the Lord, revealing a genuine quest for understanding in divine justice. Aware of the imminent destruction of Sodom, Abraham dares to question God about the possibility of sparing the righteous along with the wicked. This audacious dialogue resonates with the exhortation in James 5 verse 16, emphasizing that the prayer of a righteous person can have powerful effects. The narrative continues with the bold negotiation between Abraham and God, in which Abraham questions the possibility of sparing the city because of the righteous. Psalm 86, verse 15, expresses this context by stating, "But you, Lord, are a compassionate and gracious God, slow to anger, abounding in love and faithfulness." This declaration highlights God's willingness to listen to the pleas of his servants and his readiness to act with compassion in response to fervent intercessions. The story reveals not only divine compassion but also the importance of persistence in the pursuit of justice and mercy. When God decided to destroy the cities of the plain, including Sodom and Gomorrah, the Bible recounts a significant event. Before the destruction of Sodom, Lot and his family were rescued by two angels sent by the Lord. This rescue occurred thanks to divine mercy and God's commitment to the covenant established with Abraham. Faced with the insistence of the inhabitants of Sodom to capture the angels, they afflicted the men with blindness. The angels then commanded Lot to take his family out of the condemned city. Lot hesitated, requiring the angels to forcefully lead him out of the city. During the escape, the family was warned not to look back. However, Lot's wife disobeyed this order and was transformed into a pillar of salt. This dramatic transformation serves as a representation of the consequences when we disregard divine guidance. Lot's wife, transformed into a pillar of salt, strikingly illustrates the moral consequences of choices. Lot, though spared from imminent destruction, is not exempt from the moral consequences of his decisions. His choice to dwell near Sodom exposed his family to a corrosive environment, revealing his struggle to maintain moral integrity amidst surrounding corruption. This struggle of Lot resonates with contemporary challenges faced by Christians in societies permeated by values opposed to biblical teachings. After leaving Sodom, Lot and his two daughters sought refuge in a small city, fearing for their lives. They took refuge in a cave in a mountainous region, demonstrating hesitation to fully trust in God's plan, an attitude contrasting with the unwavering trust demonstrated by Abraham during his journey, even in the face of uncertainties and challenges. Lot's choice to take refuge in a cave represents, in a way, the human tendency to seek isolation in the face of adversity. The cave symbolizes not only a physical shelter but also a state of emotional and spiritual seclusion. This raises the question of how traumatic experiences can affect one's ability to fully engage in life and relationships. It was in this place that a terrible event occurred, causing Lot's daughters to fear for their safety. Worried about preserving the family's lineage, feeling isolated and without prospects of finding husbands, they devised a plan. At a certain point, Lot's daughters intoxicated their father and, driven by a lack of understanding of moral and ethical norms, each lay with Lot on successive nights, seeking to generate offspring from this incestuous union. From this union, Moab and Ben-Ammi were born, giving rise to the nations of the Moabites and Ammonites, respectively. These peoples caused various problems for the Israelites throughout biblical history. The narrative about Lot in the Bible continues, highlighting his complex and controversial relationship with his daughters after the events in Sodom. However, after this point, Lot's story remains without further details. It is uncertain whether he managed to rebuild his life or if he ended his days in the cave in the mountains where the events with his daughters took place. It is important to note that the Apostle Peter mentions Lot in his second epistle, specifically in verses 7 and 8 of chapter 2. This passage is another reference to the episode of the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. In the New Testament, Jesus also mentions Lot in the Gospel of Luke, in an apocalyptic context, recalling the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah and Lot's salvation. This account serves as a reminder for the end times, emphasizing the importance of readiness and obedience to God. The biblical account shows that Lot had the opportunity to learn from Abraham, recognized as the father of faith. However, unlike his uncle, Lot did not follow the path of faith, choosing to be guided by his own perceptions and desires. This personal approach resulted in significant afflictions and left deep marks on his family. Lot's story serves as an example of the consequences of choices based more on personal views than on faith and divine guidance. There are valuable lessons for contemporary Christian life that emerge from this account. The narrative of Sodom and Gomorrah underscores the importance of making ethical decisions even in the face of adverse cultural pressures. Paul, in his letter to the Romans, exhorts believers not to conform to the world's standards but to be renewed by the transformation of the mind, as mentioned in Romans 12 verse 2. This passage highlights the need for contemporary Christians to remain steadfast in their faith and moral values, regardless of external influences. May Lot's story be a source of inspiration for you. Share your thoughts in the comments and send this video to your friends and family. May God bless you. See you soon.